So another area of the store that tends to be very confusing just because of the sheer number of choices is the bread aisle. Should I have bread? What bread should I choose? So typically I recommend choosing, if possible, a whole wheat bread. And so how are we going to know if it's whole wheat? We're going to take that bread off of the shelf. We're going to turn it over and look at that ingredient list. So what is the first ingredient? And this is a whole wheat bread. That first ingredient says whole wheat flour. Now you can see it says whole grain wheat on the front. It's very obvious. So that's what we're looking for. We're also going to look, what's the serving size? This bread actually is 2 slices as a serving versus some breads will be 1 slice. The calories will range vastly. So depending on your goals and what you're looking for, you might want to go with something that's maybe lower in calorie or higher in calorie. But what I really encourage you to do is go for the whole wheat first because it's going to have more fiber, more B vitamins like we mentioned before. That grain has not been refined or processed. So again, you're getting a lot more fiber, a lot more nutrition from that bread. You can go with the store brand. Just look again for that whole grain wheat or whole grain, whatever flour it is. It doesn't have to be wheat, but it can be whole rye. But that first ingredient should say whole in front of the flour. That means it hasn't been refined. And again, it doesn't have to be always, so it's okay if you're having white bread every so often, or a nice baguette that's not a whole grain. Half of your grains per day, try to make them whole because you're gonna get that added B vitamins, that fiber, that protein that's naturally in the bread. I also want to talk a little bit about marketing, right? This looks good, says honey wheat. This one says honey wheat. You tend to think that's probably a good one because it's wheat, right? But what's missing is that word whole. So if we take this off the shelf, we look at that ingredient list, we're going to see that first ingredient is enriched wheat flour. That means there's no word whole there. So it's not a whole grain. Another way you would know, you look at that ingredient, the food label, and look and see, is there fiber in it? Most bread's gonna have a couple grams of fiber if it's whole grain. If it's not, it won't have much fiber in it at all. So it's another way to identify whether or not it's got some fiber in there. So again, there's lots of options. Just look for one that's whole grain, and if possible, it's got some fiber. And then you wanna look at that ingredient list to identify. I do really love sprouted grain breads. If you can find those, it's another added benefit. Basically, they take that whole grain, they allow it to sprout, so it actually becomes maybe a little bit easier on digestion, a little bit higher in amino acid profile, so it's a little bit more better for us. Those do tend to be a little bit more expensive though, so the regular store brand whole wheat is also a great option. But that key word there in the bread aisle is look for whole in that first ingredient list.